Hi, everyone. I'm Amara, and welcome to Amara's Warm Tales. I'm beyond excited to have you here in this cozy corner of stories. Today, I'm thrilled to share a brand new story I've written just for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let's spark a conversation. I read and reply to every single one, so come join me. Now, let's dive into the story. For LaToya Simmons, life was a relentless rhythm of work, family, and quiet faith until a routine surgery unraveled the fabric of her reality. A single mother and community advocate in Charlotte, North Carolina, she had always carried a childhood prayer close to her heart, a whispered wish to glimpse the divine, sparked by her grandmother's tales of a radiant heaven. But when a sudden illness thrust her onto the operating table, LaToya found herself standing on a shimmering hill, hand in hand with a figure of boundless love, gazing at a golden city that pulsed with celestial light. This was no dream. It was a vision so vivid it rewrote her soul. Yet, as she returned to the world, the memory of that city clashed with the chaos of her everyday life. A vindictive HOA officer, skeptical friends, and a community on edge. What secret did LaToya carry from that ethereal encounter, and how would it transform her fractured world? Her journey would test her courage, reshape her relationships, and reveal a truth that had waited decades to unfold. LaToya Simmons stood in the cramped kitchen of her modest Charlotte home, the aroma of collard greens simmering on the stove mingling with the faint scent of lemon cleaner. The late August sun filtered through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the linoleum floor. At 42, LaToya was a striking figure, tall, with deep ebony skin and tightly coiled hair pulled into a neat bun. Her eyes, a rich brown, held a quiet strength, honed by years of raising her teenage daughter, Aaliyah, alone while working as a nurse's aide at Mercy Hospital. The house, a two-bedroom ranch in the Oakview Terrace neighborhood, was her sanctuary, though its peeling paint and sagging porch drew the ire of the local HOA. LaToya's life was a delicate balance. Long shifts, Aaliyah's track meets, and her volunteer work at the community center, where she taught cooking classes to kids. Her faith, rooted in the Baptist church her grandmother Ruth had taken her to as a child, was a steady undercurrent, though she hadn't attended regularly in years. Sundays were for rest, not sermons, she'd tell herself, though Ruth's stories of heaven, a city of gold and endless peace, still lingered in her dreams. That morning, LaToya felt an unusual heaviness in her abdomen, a dull ache that pulsed with each step. She dismissed it as stress. The past week had been fraught with tension. Officer Clarence Brody, the HOA's self-appointed enforcer, had left another citation on her doorstep, this time for an overgrown hedge. Brody, a wiry man with a permanent scowl, patrolled Oakview Terrace like a sheriff, his badge gleaming with petty authority. LaToya had clashed with him before, over her mailbox's faded paint, over Aaliyah's bike left on the lawn, and each encounter left her seething. She suspected his scrutiny wasn't just about rules. Her status as a black single mother in a gentrifying neighborhood made her a target. Still, she'd trimmed the hedge, swallowing her pride to avoid a fine she couldn't afford. Now, as she stirred the greens, the ache sharpened, a hot knife twisting in her side. She leaned against the counter, sweat beading on her forehead despite the air conditioning's hum. Aaliyah, sprawled on the couch with her phone, didn't notice her mother's discomfort. LaToya's friend, Marissa, a bubbly social worker who lived 2 streets over, was due to stop by later, and LaToya hoped to shake off the pain before then. By midday, the pain was unbearable, a fire spreading through her abdomen. LaToya called Marissa, her voice tight with worry, and asked her to drive her to the hospital. Marissa arrived in her beat-up Corolla, her round face creased with concern. The emergency room at Mercy Hospital was a chaotic blur, beeping monitors, harried nurses, and the antiseptic sting in the air. LaToya lay on a gurney, her hands clenching the thin sheet as a doctor pressed her abdomen. The diagnosis came swiftly: acute appendicitis, likely ruptured, requiring immediate surgery. Her white blood cell count was alarmingly high, and the doctor's grave expression sent a chill through her. Aaliyah, summoned from home, stood by her side, her usual bravado replaced by wide-eyed fear. Marissa held LaToya's hand, whispering prayers LaToya barely heard. As they wheeled her toward the operating room, the cold steel of the gurney bit into her back, and the fluorescent lights overhead blurred into a blinding haze. She thought of Aaliyah, of Ruth's stories, of the golden city she'd imagined as a child. Fear mingled with a strange calm as the anesthesia took hold, pulling her into darkness. In that void, LaToya's consciousness shifted. She stood on a hill, barefoot, the grass beneath her feet a vibrant emerald, each blade distinct and alive, brushing her skin with a warmth that felt like love itself. The air shimmered with a pearlescent glow, and her senses were impossibly sharp. She could count the grass blades, feel their texture, smell their sweet, earthy scent. Her hospital gown was gone, replaced by a flowing white robe that moved like liquid light. To her right stood a figure, radiant and human, yet divine, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that held the depth of oceans, a swirling blend of amber and green. His presence was a tide of compassion, washing away her fear. He extended a hand, and when she took it, the world expanded. Below stretched a valley, its floor veiled in a soft mist that parted to reveal a city of gleaming domes and spires, their golden surfaces catching an unseen sun. The sky above was a canvas of impossible colors, crimson fading to violet, with streaks of turquoise at its zenith. Light beams, like living prisms, danced across the valley, some brushing LaToya's skin with a gentle heat that filled her with joy. She felt no pain, only a profound peace, as if she'd come home. The figure spoke no words, but his gaze conveyed a promise. This was the answer to her childhood prayer, the heaven Ruth had described. LaToya's heart swelled with awe, tears prickling her eyes as she took in the city's majesty. The beams of light wove patterns in the air, some striking the distant trees, perfect conical pines that sparkled like diamonds when touched. The city's rooftops gleamed, hinting at streets and lives beyond her sight. She wanted to step closer, to explore, but a sudden jolt ripped her from the hill. Her eyes fluttered open to a masked doctor leaning over her, the operating room's sterile chill replacing the valley's warmth. Her chest ached from the defibrillator's shock, and her throat was dry as she croaked her name. The doctor's relief was palpable. She'd flatlined, her heart stopping for nearly a minute. LaToya's mind reeled, the golden city vivid in her memory, its light still pulsing in her veins. She was alive, but the vision had changed her, planting a seed of wonder and purpose she couldn't yet grasp. Recovery was a slow, grueling process. LaToya spent 10 days in the hospital, her body weakened by the infection that had nearly claimed her. The ICU was a sterile cage, its beige walls and constant beeping a stark contrast to the vibrant hill of her vision. Aaliyah visited daily, her teenage defiance softened by worry, her braids swinging as she sat by the bed, sketching in a notebook. Marissa brought homemade soup, her chatter about neighborhood gossip a lifeline to the outside world. LaToya's thoughts, though, were elsewhere, on the city, the figure, the light. She tried to tell Aaliyah about the vision, but tears choked her words, the memory too raw, too sacred. Each attempt left her sobbing, the weight of the experience overwhelming. The doctors called her survival a miracle. The surgeon, a gruff older man, admitted her case was one of the worst he'd seen in a living patient. LaToya felt the truth of his words, but her miracle wasn't just survival. It was the glimpse of something greater. Back home, the world felt both familiar and alien. The house, with its creaky floors and cluttered living room, seemed smaller, its imperfections glaring under the HOA's scrutiny. Officer Brody was waiting, his latest citation taped to her door, a fine for an unapproved flower bed she'd planted with Aaliyah months ago. Fury surged through LaToya, her hands trembling as she crumpled the paper. Brody's vendetta was personal, she was sure. his cold stares at community meetings, his comments about keeping the neighborhood clean, dripped with disdain. She wanted to confront him, to demand he leave her alone, but her body was still frail, her energy sapped by recovery. Instead, she turned to her garden, kneeling among the marigolds and zinnias, their colors a faint echo of the valley's flowers. The act of tending them grounded her, each petal a reminder of the divine beauty she'd seen. Aaliyah, watching from the porch, sensed her mother's shift, her usual chatter replaced by quiet observation. Marissa noticed it too. Over coffee at the community center, where LaToya resumed her cooking classes, Marissa pressed her for details. LaToya hesitated, the vision still too intimate to share fully. She spoke in fragments, of light, of peace, of a city that felt like home. But Marissa's skepticism was evident, her raised eyebrows suggesting she thought it a hallucination. LaToya didn't push back. She understood doubt. She doubted herself at first, wondering if the anesthesia had conjured the vision. But the memory was too vivid, too real, its emotions lingering like a melody she couldn't shake. The community center, with its scuffed floors and posters of local events, became her refuge. There, she taught kids like Jamal, a lanky 12-year-old with a quick smile, how to make cornbread, their laughter easing her turmoil. Yet Brody's citations kept coming, each one a needle in her side, threatening the peace she was trying to cultivate. LaToya's faith, once a background hum, now burned brightly. She began attending church again, slipping into the back pew of New Hope Baptist, where the choir's harmonies stirred memories of Ruth. The sermons, once rote, now felt alive, their words about God's love mirroring the figure's gaze. She prayed not for answers, but for courage, to live differently, to share her story despite the risk of ridicule. Aaliyah, though, was distant, her teenage world consumed by friends and track. LaToya worried she was failing her daughter, the vision pulling her inward while Aaliyah needed her outward strength. The tension with Brody escalated when he confronted her outside the community center, his voice sharp as he accused her of undermining neighborhood standards. LaToya stood tall, her voice steady despite her racing heart, refusing to back down. The encounter left her shaken, but it also sparked a resolve. She wouldn't let fear or Brody define her life. The vision reshaped LaToya's daily rhythm. She moved slower, savoring moments she'd once rushed through. Mornings began with coffee on the porch, the sunrise's pinks and golds a faint echo of the heavenly sunset. She'd watch Aaliyah jog to the bus stop, her daughter's long strides a reminder of her own resilience. At work, LaToya's compassion deepened. She lingered with patience, her touch gentle, her smile a quiet offering of the love she'd felt on that hill. Her colleagues noticed the change, her calm amidst the hospital's chaos, her refusal to snap under pressure. Even Aaliyah, though still guarded, began to soften, helping in the garden without being asked. Her sketches now filled with vibrant landscapes that mirrored LaToya's descriptions of the city. Brody's harassment, however, was a persistent shadow. He escalated his campaign, issuing a fine for a cracked driveway LaToya couldn't afford to repair. The neighborhood buzzed with tension. Some neighbors, like elderly Mr. Jenkins, who'd lived in Oakview Terrace for decades, supported LaToya, sharing stories of Brody's overreach. Others, newer residents drawn by the area's rising property values, sided with him, wary of anything that might lower their investment. LaToya felt the divide keenly, her identity as a Black woman amplifying the scrutiny. She considered moving, but the house held too many memories. Ruth's laughter, Aaliyah's first steps. Instead, she organized a community meeting at the center, inviting neighbors to discuss the HOA's rules. The room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Brody attended, his arms crossed, his presence a challenge. LaToya spoke from the heart, her voice trembling but clear, sharing how the citations drained her spirit. She didn't mention the vision, but its influence was evident in her call for unity, for a neighborhood that valued people over perfection. The meeting was a turning point. Mr. Jenkins rallied support, his gravelly voice recounting the neighborhood's history as a haven for Black families. Marissa, ever the organizer, proposed a petition to reform the HOA's bylaws. Even Jamal, who'd snuck into the meeting, stood up, his youthful earnestness urging everyone to be nice. Brody's face reddened, but he was outnumbered. The petition gained traction, and within weeks, the HOA board agreed to review its policies. LaToya felt a flicker of victory, though she knew Brody wouldn't relent easily. Her vision gave her strength. The city's light reminded her that love could outshine pettiness. She began sharing her story cautiously, first with Marissa, then with Aaliyah. Marissa's skepticism faded, replaced by curiosity, while Aaliyah listened wide-eyed, her sketches taking on a new depth, as if she could see the city too. LaToya's garden became a symbol of her transformation. She expanded it, planting roses and lavender, their scents filling the air. Neighbors stopped by, drawn by the colors, and LaToya shared cuttings, each one a quiet act of defiance against Brody's rules. The garden drew Aaliyah closer, their evenings spent weeding and laughing, rebuilding the bond strained by LaToya's introspection. The vision's impact rippled outward. LaToya's cooking classes grew, kids like Jamal bringing their parents, the center becoming a hub of connection. She felt the figure's presence in these moments, his love woven into her actions. Yet she wrestled with doubt. Had she truly seen heaven, or was it her mind's escape from death? The question lingered, but the vision's clarity, its warmth, anchored her. She was no prophet, just a woman changed by grace, called to live with purpose. The conflict with Brody reached a climax one humid September evening. LaToya was watering her garden when he appeared, his flashlight beam cutting through the dusk. He claimed her roses violated HOA height restrictions, his tone dripping with triumph as he handed her a $500 fine. LaToya's heart pounded, her vision of the Golden City flashing before her, a reminder to stay grounded. She refused to sign the citation, her voice firm, her eyes locked on his. Brody's smirk faltered. He wasn't used to resistance. He threatened legal action, but LaToya stood her ground, her faith and the community's support bolstering her. Neighbors watched from their porches, Mr. Jenkins leaning on his cane, Marissa filming on her phone. The standoff ended with Brody storming off, but LaToya knew it wasn't over. She felt a mix of fear and exhilaration, the vision's peace steadying her against his malice. The community rallied. Marissa's petition led to a vote, and Brody was ousted from his HOA role, replaced by Mr. Jenkins, whose fairness was undisputed. LaToya's fines were dropped, her garden declared compliant. The victory was sweet, but LaToya's focus was elsewhere, on living the vision's truth. She spoke at church, sharing her story with the congregation, her voice breaking as she described the city's light. The response was overwhelming. Some wept, others embraced her, their faith renewed. Aaliyah, sitting in the front pew, beamed with pride, her sketches now displayed at the community center, each one a tribute to her mother's vision. Marissa, once doubtful, became LaToya's fiercest advocate, organizing a neighborhood festival in the garden, where Jamal's cornbread won first prize. The event, filled with music and laughter, felt like a glimpse of the Golden City, its joy binding the community. LaToya's life settled into a new rhythm. She worked fewer shifts, prioritizing time with Aaliyah, who was applying to colleges, her track scholarship a point of pride. The garden flourished, a beacon of resilience. LaToya no longer feared Brody, who'd moved away, his influence diminished. Her faith was unshakable, the vision a compass guiding her choices. She saw the world differently, each sunrise, each child's smile, a reflection of divine beauty. Doubt still crept in, but she countered it with action, spreading love as the figure had shown her. Her story spread beyond Charlotte, inspiring strangers who wrote to her, their letters piling up on her kitchen table. LaToya felt ordinary yet chosen, her life a testament to a prayer answered after decades. Years later, LaToya stood in her garden, now a neighborhood landmark, its roses climbing a trellis Aaliyah had built. Aaliyah was at college, her letters home filled with dreams of becoming an artist, her sketches still echoing the Golden City. Marissa had moved up in her career, but their coffee dates remained a ritual, their laughter a constant. Mr. Jenkins, frail but spirited, tended his own garden nearby, a nod to LaToya's influence. Jamal, now a high schooler, still dropped by, his cornbread recipe perfected. LaToya was 50, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes brighter than ever. The vision remained vivid, its details as sharp as the day it happened. She'd written a memoir, self-published, its pages a blend of her story and Ruth's teachings, a gift to Aliyah and the community. LaToya no longer feared death. She imagined returning to the hill, the figure waiting to guide her into the city, its domes gleaming under an eternal sun. But she was in no rush. Life was too rich, too full. The HOA conflict, once a storm, was a distant memory, its lessons woven into her strength. She'd faced Brody's malice and won, not with anger, but with love, the vision's light, her shield. Her prayer, born in a child's heart, had been answered in a way she couldn't have foreseen, transforming her from a weary nurse into a beacon of hope. She knelt in the garden, the soil cool under her fingers, and whispered thanks, not just for the vision, but for the life it had birthed. The golden city was real, she knew, but so was the beauty before her, in every petal, every smile, every dawn. LaToya's legacy grew quietly. The community center named a wing after her, its walls lined with Aliyah's art and Jamal's awards. Neighbors shared her story, a modern parable of faith and resilience. She spoke at churches and schools, her words simple but powerful, urging others to seek the divine in the everyday. Her memoir found a small but devoted readership, its pages worn by those seeking meaning. Aliyah, now an art teacher, carried her mother's vision into her work, her canvases alive with light. Marissa, retired, tended LaToya's garden when she traveled to speak. Mr. Jenkins passed, his garden a memorial, tended by Jamal. LaToya, in her 60s, felt the vision's pull stronger, its promise of peace a comfort as her body slowed. She stood on her porch, the sunset painting the sky, and felt the figure's presence, his love as real as the breeze on her skin. Her life, once ordinary, was now a tapestry of grace, each thread a choice to live as she'd seen, fully, fearlessly, in awe of the divine woven into the world.